2021 was a real period within which lots of real estate property companies were looking at obsessed by life science. We quickly realized that everybody seemed to be sort of ignoring health tech. When we did our analysis, we realized that the VC that supports life sciences and health tech was really scattered like seed across London. And so we thought, well, why not try and aggregate that? Why should that not be in Marylebone? Why should that not be in Harley Street? It was a natural evolution for us to move into health tech.
So Mark, welcome to the Healthtech Podcast. Here we are in Hale House in the brand new podcast studio. Delighted that you're here and looking forward to getting into it. So first of all, how are you?
Thank you for having me here. It's great to come over to Hale House. I've been here a couple of times, obviously a building that means a lot to me and to the Howard de Walden Estate, but it's just fantastic to be here in the podcaster content creation space that we've delivered here.
Absolutely. And do you know what? It's rare for us not to have a health tech entrepreneur on this podcast.
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Well, you're sort of a real person. You're out of our health tech bubble, and so the way that we start these podcasts normally is for the guests to tell their story, and so this is a little bit different. And so I'm actually really interested in, I guess, for people that don't know what the Howard de Walden Estate is or the Harley Street Health District. You're obviously CEO of the Howard de Walden Estate, so. Why don't you kick off by telling us a little bit about what the estate is, what the Harley Street Health District is, and I guess a bit of your background and what leads you to be CEO and king of the castle.
So the estate itself, Howard de Walden Estate, is 95 acres in Marylebone, central London. Broadly, it runs from Marylebone Road down to Wigmore Street, for those who know central London well, to Marylebone High Street in the west, and almost across to here, where we are in the eastern part of the estate. It's interesting, it's all in one area, it's owned by one family ultimately, but it's actually quite diverse in terms of its use. And what I mean by that is that whilst healthcare, which we'll talk about inevitably, is the largest use by income and by value, we've also got residential, we've also got office, we have retail, and we have a bit of educational. So it's quite a diverse community in Marylebone itself. And you mentioned the Harley Street Health District. This area has been synonymous with healthcare for 160 years. I was asked this question actually by a new employee today at work, and they said to me, "Why did we cut me?" And my answer to that is, I think there's a lot of muse houses. So doctors typically would have had their access to their carriage and their driver, and they would live in the house that they would actually deliver healthcare from. And this area, whilst it's quite it's a very nice area to live in. It's not probably as expensive as Kensington, or wasn't as expensive in Kensington and Mayfair back in the 1860s. So the doctors would live here and go out and see their patients, when they needed to, and access their carriages.
That's amazing. And so you and your background, how does one become CEO of such an estate?
Well, I think they just got to be around a long time. I mean, I was asked this question before, and I remember doing I was on a panel with the lady who's the rector of Westminster University, and she said she wanted to be a chief executive from the age of 15, and I was thinking I never wanted to be a chief executive when I was the age of 51. Never mind 15. But I come from I did like a very finance-related kind of degree and discipline. I qualified as what was called a corporate treasurer by background. So treasurers tend to be the person in a company that borrows the money to make sure that they can fund their business activities, and so it tends to be the biggest companies would have a treasurer. And really in all my life, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a group treasurer of a company. So everything after then has been a little bit of a bonus, but I was previously the finance director, so there's a lot of correlation between a treasurer and a finance director. Ultimately, treasurers usually report to finance directors. And I did that at Howard de Walden for 9 years before becoming chief executive. And I've been chief executive since 2020, so quite a difficult period. That was the September 2020. So we've had, peak COVID, all of the things that could have impacted real estate as it happened on my watch, which is, so I think, I'm somebody that's very good for a crisis. I seem to emerge through the crisis, and that was similar to how I changed between when I became a finance director. It was after the global financial crisis.
Okay.
So you don't want me getting promoted again, because if I get promoted again, it must be that there's some major crisis.
Well, They talk about peacetime CEOs and wartime CEOs, or wartime leaders and peacetime leaders. So yes. A wartime leader, you think?
I'm definitely more of a wartime leader. That's what it feels like anyway. Yeah. But you get the battle scars, of course, with war. Anyway, but there we go.
Amazing. So let's talk about Harley Street, because under your leadership now, Harley Street is being reimagined. So we're in a time where, obviously 160 years later, Harley Street, it's an interesting brand, isn't it, in healthcare, because it's still obviously associated with medical excellence, particularly in the private sector. And there's a lot of legacy to that. There's a lot of heritage. But there's been obviously this recent rebrand of the district into the Harley Street Health District, and this new visual aesthetic and this new brand. So what led you to doing that rebrand? What was it that, I guess, that you saw as the potential for doing that?
Number of things. It's a very good question, but the number of things. So we realised that healthcare was going through a highly disruptive transformational period.
Right there.
It wasn't just this was happening pre-COVID, but after it. Yeah. So that we wanted to make sure that we were responding to that, and actually one of the key things was that we talked about it being the Harley Street medical area, and that's it sounds not a lot of difference talking about it being a healthcare district, and the reason for that is medical is a kind of property terminology for the use of the buildings. So we were trying to imagine it from the perspective of our occupiers. They don't say they work in the medical industry, they work in the healthcare. That's the standard industrial classification code, or whatever they call it, SIC code. So that was really important to us to actually think of it in a different way. But we'd never also really asked, we do customer surveys about the building, the services to the building, how are we performing for you? But what we hadn't asked them about was the area more generally, and the Harley Street area. And actually, you mentioned that we knew that we might have had hunches and observations and things we thought were true, but it was really important to hear from a broad audience. And that audience wasn't just people who were already here. We asked people who were in health tech innovation, or entrepreneurs, well, why are you not in the Harley Street? What stops you? What's your perception? Yes. What's your view of it? And there was some real positives. The international recognised for healthcare, the fact that it had a reputation for excellence, but there was some negatives as well. There was a view that it might be old and stuffy,
yes.
and didn't represent the best of modern healthcare, that it was expensive and elitist. There was a view formed that the reason we're not here, it's a very expensive location from which us to do business from. So, having that information was part of the rebrand and really sort of a sort of recalibration of our strategy. So that's why it was really, really important. So It's subtle, but actually really looking forward in a very kind of insightful way. And there was some real good nuggets of information came from it, like comments about us, how important it was for us to be a convener and curator of events. That was really valuable to people in the district. And actually also this view that there was more that could be done, that we were maybe not making the greatest use of that. But they were kind of some of the insights. They're really helpful stuff that actually, as an organisation wanting to build value and improve the area, were really important to us.
It's so interesting because obviously here we are on the Healthtech Podcast, and Healthtech, it's a wonderful, wonderful space. And I use the word space there quite interestingly, because it exists kind of in space. It doesn't actually have a foothold. It doesn't have a place on the ground that we can kind of point to. And Harley Street's interesting because Harley Street, as you quite rightly point out, has got this medical excellence element to it, but potentially the old, the expensive, the elitist and things like that. Something that innovation can fix quite quickly.
Absolutely.
Because that medical excellence can be maintained by those innovators, by what is going on in technology, and by staying on top of it. And so this idea that health tech doesn't have a home, the fact that Harley Street has all these things, it's kind of this match made in heaven, really, that it makes sense for this flywheel to occur, where you've got the technologists coming in sat next to the people delivering the healthcare, that they can exist in the same geography, that serendipity can happen, and something can actually happen. So is the idea here to set this cluster up so it becomes nationally recognised, globally recognised? Is that the vision here, that this is going to be the place for this?
It is, but I mean, just take you back, because to arrive here, back when I became chief executive in 2021 was a real period within which lots of real estate property companies were looking at, obsessed by life sciences. Everyone was talking about life sciences in a way we'd never heard anybody talk about life sciences before. Okay. And we thought, well, actually, where do we exist on that? You know, we've already got healthcare here, and everybody was talking about London not having lab spaces, and we quickly realised that health, exactly the point that you made, everybody seemed to be sort of ignoring health tech. It was all this obsession with lab and transitioning from bench to bedside. Everybody was obsessed by this, and I kept thinking to myself, where are all these people in lab coats currently working? But in our research for the area that we conducted, and we did the review of the brand, we realised that there was a lot of people providing kind of ancillary healthcare support, but with a large digital footprint. Now, this could be somebody who's providing cloud technology to NHS trusts, to medical animation and medical animation business. You've got Johnson & Johnson's Innovation Centre, which is down just next to Oxford Street, so not on our estate, but just off our estate. And so we quickly realised that actually this area has a lot of people who work in tech and data, and health data as well is really important to them, and they've chosen to be in this area for a purpose, for a reason. And it was sort of under our radar. We hadn't realised that. So all we're trying to do is grow the footprint of that. So it feels like it's a natural evolution in the sense that we've moved into this space, but we also feel that we've got like a sort of authenticity or a right to move into in a way that you might want to say, oh, we're Canary Wharf or White City, we're going to do this or we're going to do the other. But actually, it was a natural evolution for us to move into health tech. And actually, you know, what we wanted to do was, we realised that we have clinics here, we have hospitals here. If there was a way that we can provide a bridge between those that are bringing the health tech or trialling health tech ideas and connecting them to our existing clinics, that was really valuable to us as well.
This is really interesting, because I think where that you have the right to do it, I think that actually becomes very quickly not only the massive opportunity to do it, but even I'd go so far as to say almost the responsibility to do it. Because I don't know of another place where that can really happen at scale. In the US, you look at somewhere like Texas Medical Center, where they've got everything on a campus, which I know you're very well aware of. But actually, when you think of the role of the private sector, we obviously have the NHS here, which is a public healthcare system that's absolutely everywhere, obviously. But the role of the private sector is this interesting place, particularly when it comes to health tech, because private healthcare clinics can operate very independently. They can trial and test things. And by trialing and testing things in the private sector and then buying things and supporting the health tech businesses, they can prove an economic model that the public sector can then adopt. And actually it becomes a very interesting test bed and a very important actually part of what is the entire healthcare system in this country. And so for me, this is super exciting because of what I foresee us doing in making that more concrete, making that more clear, that is what's going on here. We're actually very proud of that. And we're supporting the whole healthcare system nationally because we're doing this. And actually, we're going to really lean into doing this. It leaves room for, you've got the NIA that have moved in upstairs, the NHS Innovation Accelerator, those businesses being supported by NHS contracts as well as others, I imagine. And so there's other accelerators that can push that thoughtful innovation through and the right innovation. So it really becomes, I think it really does become a huge opportunity, but also a responsibility. And I guess, am I speaking the right language there?
Yeah, no, you are. I mean, look, we also this perception of private healthcare being elitist, and we realised when we moved into this space, our interaction with the public health sector would be much greater than it ever has been in the past, and that was really important to us because we feel like there is the opportunity to introduce something at scale into public health would make a big difference. We've got a real problem in this country. We're heading towards healthcare bankruptcy.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is that you've got, this unceasing demand for healthcare. It's sort of growing like at a 45-degree line. But the support around healthcare, whether that be workforce or diagnostics and therapeutics, is sort of more at 10%. So every year it's getting worse. So in terms of bending, you can't really bend the curve. People are presenting continuously with problems with living longer. There's a huge challenge around that. So we think that technology is going to be where the gap will get bridged. It has to be, that's what's happened in other industries. And basically that healthcare hasn't really been disrupted in the way that other industries have been. So we feel it was right for this now. I mean, maybe coming up from not from a healthcare background, my background is finance, not coming from a tech background, was quite helpful because it might have seemed clear and obvious to me where the true problem was because I was simplifying it. But in a way that's quite helpful because you need, in order to bring around this catalyst for change, that's really what that convinced me that it was the right thing to do. But it was really important for us. It's a really good point you make, James. But it was really important for us to get UCL partners on board as well in this building, because that sort of demonstrated the direction of travel that we weren't trying to say that it being private, elitist. It was going to be, even though I agree with you, those can be exemplars for incredibly good practice and behaviour that can then be for the public good, and I think that will be the case. But it was actually really important for us to for UCL partners to believe that they could grow their business successfully from here. They could help organisations. They could make a difference, and hosting the National Innovation Accelerator here would be part of that.
That's awesome. And I think that's going to be really important because I think so much of it is interconnected in healthcare, of course, and actually so much of what we do in healthcare and health tech is based on trust. And actually by using all of your resources, by using everything that you have, and actually by giving that space to UCLP and of course, like, you could have many people there, but choosing to have people that are on that NHS side of the table, on that public healthcare side of the table, it's showing the inclusivity, I guess, and it's showing that you understand that, and it's giving people opportunity. One question that I do have is with more your finance hat on, I guess, or your CEO hat in terms of strategy, what do you think that this lives or dies on? What do you think the success of this project, this creation of the health district, what do you think that lives or dies on? And is there anything that keeps you up at night of like, these are things I need to actually do to make this happen, or anything like what do you think leads to the success here?
Look, I think we've already got successful health district, but you can never sit back on your laurels. So what the three elements in terms of the broader strategy is really building on what we already have, and taking the best of that and trying to grow it. So some of the things that we are looking at is looking at the specializations, the things that we're known for, what's happened in Harley Street, and really trying to understand where there are gaps, particularly where there are gaps where the demand exists. Because so one of the things that we've discovered is that women's health was very much underrepresented, and we've seen a growth in women's health clinics, and they're all doing well and they're all growing and they all need more space. So that's the sort of thing that you need to try and lean into. But also there's the classic aging conditions, as I call them, the sort of cancer is affecting us all as we live long, cardiac, orthopedics, ophthalmology, dementia, cognitive decline. And they will always appeal to the operators because typically the people are more likely to be insured. They're more likely to self-pay, which helps. So that's always going to be an aspect of Harley Street that's going to be in demand for space. But on the international side, we've had a lot of over the last 10 to 15 years, we've picked up a number of US operators, healthcare systems choosing to be in Harley Street.
Yes.
And perhaps one of the things we need to work on is more kind of that international adoption more in the non-English speaking world in a way.
Interesting.
To get that, because maybe Harley Street is more recognized internationally in the English speaking world, but maybe not so when you're in Asia or Africa or whatever. So that's something so it's building on what we've got, but also embracing innovation, not just for innovation's sake, but because I told you I'm passionate about this view that I do believe that tech will be part of the solution. It won't be the only solution. At the end of the day, it's a people business. You do need to be operated on by a surgeon. Yeah. You do need to see, you know, you do going to need to go under anaesthetics. You need radiographers. All of those things will happen, and but actually, we think that it's part of the solution to the healthcare problem that we have in the country. And then the other bit is the collaboration, because I think one of the wonderful phrases someone said was that when we did the rebrand was you've got this, you can sprinkle some magic dust and bring everything together, which is a really romantic way of describing it. But actually, I buy into that vision. It's a beautiful way to describe it, because the more that we can kind of get them to collaborate and encourage that collaboration will be more impactful, trying to bring those organisations together.
I love this. So one thing you mentioned at the beginning, and it's funny because words are our thing in communications and marketing and things like that. You talked about inclusivity, or you mentioned inclusivity, and it's interesting because people can say these words, and you can say that, oh, the idea is to be inclusive, the idea is to become more accessible, the idea is to, you know, help save healthcare, whatever it is. But it's interesting that when you talk about a specific point there, a specific point of focus on non-English speaking people and what you want to do for them, for me that does point to the fact that this isn't just a strategy. There's a lot of actual execution that's underway here, that you genuinely do want to change the view of Harley Street, because I don't know, not all of this is, I mean, you need to make money, right? Like, of course.
Absolutely, and we don't deny that. You know, we need to, you know, we want to grow the area, we want to grow the rent, we want it to be successful. We have to do that. We have shareholders that we need to return. Yeah, absolutely. But
I think, yeah, I do wonder once the health tech moves in, the dynamics are going to change again as well. And actually, I think some of those value propositions are yet to even be seen. I think it's going to be interesting what happens when the health tech really starts happening here. It's going to be interesting to see who that attracts. It's going to be interesting what that does for your occupiers, and it's interesting what that then does again for the amount of health tech that wants to come in. And as I say, that flywheel, it's something that I'm definitely keeping an eye on. But one thing, we're in Hale House, right? So Hale House is sort of like the beginning, and this press release was out sort of last year. You guys spending, what was it, 52 million on this place, buying the building, renovating it, sorting out an initial actual co-working space. I can tell you that this morning when I came in to work here, Keith Grimes, who is a GP, he's the founder of an AI consultancy called Curistica. I saw him. First person I saw was him when I walked in, and was like, oh, that's quite a big name in health tech. That's interesting. Then I saw Nada, the founder of Ampersand, who is upstairs as well, has got office space here. I saw him, and I was like, oh, it's another quite a big name. I saw Ahuti. I saw Jenny Shand earlier. Her and I had a good chat earlier. So what you've said you want to do is already happening, and this place has only been open for 5 minutes.
Well, we haven't even launched properly.
The launch
part is on the 7th of May, so yes.
And so it's interesting to me that this is already happening. So how do you see this getting even better, going even further, even just in this building, let alone what you can do with others? Because there's 3 sites, right? For Hale House. So
this is kind of the mothership, as I call it, of there's another building on 19 and 42 Portland Place, but the facilities mostly in this building. So you have auditorium for up to 150. You have the podcast space that we're in at the moment. There's all of networking space. There's a cafeteria. You have a roof terrace booking. You can book the rooms by the hour, boardrooms, all of that sort of thing. But those buildings will provide sort of more of the private office space. And actually, one of the things we realised, it isn't just about health tech as well, it's the ancillary services as well, the support services, because it's really important that the advisors are here too. If not quite in Hale House, in the building we're in, we want to draw them in, and for the people who are in this building to meet those, whether that could be their lawyers, PR advisors, it could be, it's the money people as well, because one of the things that we discovered in all of this, and another one of the sort of the serendipity of where do we arrive at this, we realized that we were attracting consumer VC into Marylebone, and we were asking them, well, why Marylebone? Why have you come? And they said, well, it's a wonderful area to bring our investee companies. We don't want to be in Mayfair. So we started to think, and when we did our analysis, we realized that the VC that supports life sciences and health tech was really scattered like seed across London. And so we thought, well, why not try and aggregate that? Why should that not be in Marylebone? Why should that not be in Harley Street? Because we want Harley Street to exist in a way where, you could be walking, exactly those kind of accidental meetings are really helpful, that you could be walking along the road and you bump into somebody that that you've been meaning to try and catch up with, and you say, let's have a coffee, great to see you, or how are you getting on with this project or whatever. We want that to be something that actually happens, and we think there are only few places in the world that probably can happen. I mean, if you were in Boston, it probably happens to some extent, and around about Kendall Square. But we felt that there was that London does well at this stuff, particularly around the data science, but actually it wasn't being aggregated in any way, shape or form. So that's the opportunity that we saw, and we thought, well, let's go for it. Let's make it happen. Let's be bold. Let's make a statement. The statement is spending £52 million across these 3 buildings. So that's, and spending money to refurbish this building. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, the proof, so you said, well, the success will be when this building is fully let and the 2 others are fully let, and we need another couple of buildings. That's when you can get me back on the podcast, and we'll tell you how well it's going.
Say that it was a success.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boston. There's another one that we've mentioned already, Texas Medical Center. When you're thinking about this whole health cluster, because this is something that you talked about as well, like whole health, like the whole of the body, not just medical aesthetics or whatever you might think about Harley Street. It's the whole ecosystem. It's the whole prevention to cure. It's the whole everything. One of those things is this whole health cluster with everyone here that gives you the serendipity and gives that real value to everybody. Is there anyone that you look at globally, as I say, Boston, Texas Medical Center, etc., that you want to draw from in terms of like emulating certain areas?
Look, there aren't many, there aren't, Texas is, but it's not quite in the heart of Houston, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
And what we noticed was that all of these other districts, they're affiliated to a health system, like whether it's Mayo in Rochester, Minnesota, or a university, it's a biomedical campus like Cambridge linked to the university. So in a way that we feel that we're perfectly positioned to be kind of agnostic between we're not, whilst we've got UCL partners upstairs, equally we've got the Imperial Health Network on Marylebone High Street and Ferguson House. So we sit between, the two, and then it's not that far to get to King's Health south of the river, and they're already represented in the Harley Street Health District. We've got guys in St Thomas's doing private patient unit here. So in a way, we think we're perfectly positioned. And one of my ideas for this was to say that, if you're on a sort of, I'm going to be controversial here, but why not? But if you're on a dull science park in Oxford or Cambridge, it's so invigorating to work in the heart of London and in a real city. I'm sure when you went to Oxford and Cambridge, that wasn't where you expected to probably spend your career. So we felt like there would be an opportunity to draw people from Oxford or Cambridge to London to co-working space at Hale House, because London will always be a good networking spot, meeting place for those sort of people. So again, we're totally agnostic. We want to be, that's what Harley Street has been. It's got that mixture that's really unparalleled in any other health district in the world. It tends to be dominated by a health system in one way, shape or form.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually talking about what Harley Street's always been and the heritage. There's such a rich history, there's such rich heritage that when we are talking about the new and we're talking about innovation and we're talking about cutting edge and we're talking about best in class and the new research and the new technology and all these different things, when you think about the rebrand and you're thinking about what Harley Street is to become, how important do you think it is to still nod to that heritage in some way? How important is it that there's, I don't know, exhibition about, you know, what's been here in the past, even if it is to say, you know, in the past we were innovative still and here we are now today. I don't know, how do you think about balancing that heritage with the new?
It is a challenge. I mean, so one of the reasons why we didn't knock lots of buildings into labs was it just really wasn't possible to do that under the planning rules. We would have changed the building so dramatically.
Right.
And we think that the area's appeal is in part its architecture. You know, we think people like working in this environment.
It's true.
So what we would like to think is that we are, this is where I can put my real estate hat on, you know, we think we're industry leaders in terms of refurbishing space to high standard to meet, you know, we think we're unprecedented in delivering healthcare buildings to great specification to work in these kind of constrained environments. We've done that. We do get MRI scanners into townhouses in Harley Street.
How?
By lifting, one of the designs is you put a roof on top of the building that you can detach.
Amazing.
Periodically, and then you do have to close the street over a weekend and have a massively tall crane that lifts it over the top. I mean, I'm terrified when that happens. When my
hold on. So just to be absolutely clear here, there's a moment where you've got an MRI scanner
dangling
suspended, just dangling in midair above a building with no roof on it.
Absolutely,
Amazing.
and I love the development team, my project team tell me when it's happening. I said, I just don't want to know, please, because I'm not going to be able to sleep, you know, on Friday night, Saturday night, worrying that that's taking place on Sunday. You know, you get in the morning, you just have a big sweat because you could just see the scope for. I mean, I'm sure that the teams we contract with obviously know what they're doing, and we do a proper due diligence on who we use. But it is a bit scary. But you know, if I was to be honest, if Harley Street didn't exist and didn't have its heritage, you know, would you create it today in these buildings? You wouldn't, because the you know, it would be too costly, too expensive to do so. But it does exist. Its heritage is there. It's a reason for attracting people. And the one thing that we think about, you know, even though this is a great building and we love buildings and we get infatuated by buildings and amenity, we don't try and put all of the amenity in a building. We think that Marylebone's, we're the antithesis of WeWork, because what WeWork try and do is everything is just about their building. They have to put all of the amenity, all of the facility in the building. But we feel it's important for people who come to the Harley Street Health District to have a great high street. You know, they can go along and shop or go for coffee in Marylebone Village. That's really important to them. They can choose to live here. It's a really thriving area.
Yeah.
And the office users tell us that all the time. They don't want every amenity in their office.
Yeah.
They want to be in an amenity-rich environment. So that's where our focus happens to be. But obviously in this type of building, this is the opposite. We have more amenity clearly in Hale House than some of our other facilities.
I think this is a really interesting point, because so 8 years, I think it was about 8 years ago, I, with another guy that I was working with, we were actually looking for a 50,000 square foot co-working space somewhere in the M25 that we could start to build a health tech cluster around. We were running accelerators at the time. We had access to a lot of startups. So we had this thought.
You didn't come to me.
I didn't, and I should have done. We weren't connected, unfortunately. But we were looking for this space, and actually, I mean, the first thing is the space for that just doesn't exist in any sort of area that's not like a brownfield site or something that, you know, it's not.
It's hard to create it from scratch.
It's hard to create it from scratch. And even where there were examples of it, maybe not 50,000 square feet, but something close, even where there were those examples, there was always this, in some ways, intangible, it doesn't feel right. And in other ways, when you do try and make that tangible, it's because the walk from the nearest train station is just a bit much. Like, that train station isn't a particularly good one. It's on a weird line. Like, that one doesn't have anything near it. Like, all those different things. And even when we stacked up like the economics of it in isolation, it's tough. It's tough to make that work really in isolation. Whereas it seems like the difference here, quite rightly, is that you don't need to put all amenity in the building.
No.
You've got everything around. You've got that heritage to nod to. It's a nice environment with nice architecture.
It's well connected. You know, there's a multiple number of routes to get into the area.
It is kind of the open goal. So in terms of what you're planning then, in terms of, are you taking any more roofs off buildings? Are you putting any other interesting things through the top? Are you expanding beyond the area even? Like, what are you thinking about when you're thinking about where this could go?
Yeah, look, we've still got enough potential within the area and the adjacencies to the area. I think it doesn't make sense for us to start buying buildings in East or North London and call them the Harley Street North or something, or Harley Street East. That doesn't. We would lose that authority. It dilutes what we're trying to do. So there is no immediate plans for that, but you know there's still opportunities. But what the way I see healthcare changing is in Harley Street is, I think that there'll be a consolidation of buildings within which you've got high acuity surgery takes place, or that you have a lot of consolidation, more of imaging equipment, rather than having dotted, pepper-potted MRIs all over the place. And that's not fair to me in a sense, because it may well be that the future of Harley Street in 10, 20 years' time is much more around the preventative kind of healthcare centre being in those kind of very boutique-y buildings that work well for that. Because what most people say is they don't want a clinical setting. You know, they want to be away from it. The more unclinical the setting is, then the better. So we think that could operate well for, but we're not shunning that. We're not saying we're just going to be known for that. But I do think it will evolve and it will change. And it's surprising that you think in an area that you know, with the buildings the way that they look and with planning being quite restricted. But if I mention to you that back in 2000, 40% of our revenue, our rent roll income came from offices. That figure today is only 18%. So, and it's not that it's not like offices, everybody's working from home, you don't need offices. It's nothing to do with it. It's because those buildings were transitioned over to medical space.
Right.
So that's where the demand was for medical space buildings. We did lateral conversions. We provided bigger spaces so that they would work for that. So we could accommodate the equipment that some of those organisations, those healthcare organisations needed. So who's to say that it won't transform in a different way, over the next, maybe it'll be that equipment gets smaller, we can become in a more micro environment, in which case maybe it will still consolidate and there'll be more technical equipment in Harley Street. I sort of doubt that in a way, but I just think there'll be a consolidation. But what we will do is embrace that kind of whole health continuum of, from prevention, from ambulatory care to, we think it's important that you still can get complex surgery here. Yeah. But we in the past, I guess we would have looked at preventative medicine as a bit quack medicine 20 years ago. It was, but now people are fully embracing that type of care. People worry about, what food they eat, nutrition, back care. They want to be, and it's a very American phrase, but it's true. They want to be better versions of themselves. And, we need to lean into that, but we want to have the best. Yes. We want to have the best, the best organisations in the delivery of that in Harley Street.
This is really interesting, Mark, because so one thing that I've been talking about a lot recently, especially with the advent of AI, like AI everywhere to do everything in healthcare. Like I've talked this to death on the podcast, I'm going to bore people again. But one thing that I think we need to define is what we think perfect healthcare actually is. And part of what perfect healthcare actually is a perfect patient experience. You can have perfect diagnosis and treatment. Fine, you can have that. That's great. AI is going to deliver you that. It's going to deliver a fantastic diagnosis. It's going to tell you what the right treatment is. Fine, but part of that is the perfect patient experience. Yes. And one thing that's coming through with AI is that if all goes well and it does what we expect it to do, it is going to free up time to care. It is going to free up time for us to academically look at what the perfect human experience is to go through healthcare. What's interesting in what you've just talked about is that almost in the way that you're describing the buildings, in the way that you're describing the clinics and the setup and the machines and all that sort of stuff, you're sort of academically looking at what a perfect human experience actually is. I think that's only going to go up in not only value but need. I think that what you've talked about is about to become, I mean, it's strange, you know, having property developers on the Healthtech podcast, but actually it becomes incredibly relevant if the future of healthcare is what we think it or a lot of people think it is. Because actually, if the future of healthcare is AI, we are freed up more time to care.
Absolutely.
We do want a human-to-human experience. Well, actually, we want the perfect environment as part of that. And you guys have been working on that for 160 years.
Trying to. I mean, I guess, look, I mean, I know you can do remote consultations and that's part of technology. We weren't able to do that. But, you know, I'm sorry, if I'm paying £300 to see a consultant, I want to look at them. I want to be opposite them if I'm, you know, particularly if I'm worried about something, you know, I'm really concerned about it. I really don't want to do that. So you're right. The patient experience is incredibly valuable. And it's interesting that if you ask a lot of nurses and doctors why they leave the NHS, it's not usually about money. It's usually about that they feel that they've been undervalued, or it's just the experience is not a good one. The experience of delivery of care, they're almost like you know, embarrassed about the quality of it, so they want to change it for that reason. So I think you're absolutely right. The way that we handle patients is really important. I think it says a lot about a society, or about how you know, how it treats ill people and the elderly. And we haven't been, you know, if we're honest and we shine a torch on ourselves, we've not been good at that. There are other countries in the world doing it far better than us. So why not learn from them? I'm a great believer. You look at exemplars, you ask how it can be adopted in your country or be adapted, and then you build on it, because there's a reason why it's good, and you know, we should copy it.
It's so funny. I was speaking to a guy called David Neal, who's a researcher out in Holland, and he put this very well, that for call it 160 years, we've been academically splitting hairs on the nanomoles of a certain drug and what that might do for blah blah blah. We are 160 years behind analysing the human in healthcare, because we've just always assumed what our role is.
Yes.
We've always assumed our role is to memorise a load of facts, be able to take a history and either deliver a talking therapy or tell you what drug to take. But beyond that, we're actually academically quite far behind on what is the perfect environment, what is the perfect, and it's just interesting to me that some of that expertise is what you guys have been thinking about for quite a while. Yeah,
it is. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we always remind ourselves. I'm always my back in the room conversation is ultimately we are just an owner of property. You know, we are, you know, property owner, developer, manager, whatever. But when I say that, but we're more than that, you know, and we've been dragged, and we've been more than that for a long time, particularly in healthcare, through some of the things that we do and some of the additional, you know, the convenership, the stewardship, and all of those things that are really important to us. But there is a point at which we do need to work out where do we get off on that, you know, where do we stop, and and it's all about the collaboration. Where do you work with others who are much better at it than you are, you know? So one of the reasons Hale House is managed by a company called Spacemade, because, you know, they have that hospitality experience. They have the technology, they have better technology than us, how to book all these podcasts and all these various rooms. So it's recognizing, play to your strengths, work on your weaknesses, but don't be ashamed to ask others who can help and do it better than you. So that's what I think. That's where I think the future of health, how we will move into health tech. Look, at the end of the day, we're not experts in health tech. We're not experts in healthcare. What we are is experts in the delivery within the buildings in Harley Street. That's the experience we have.
And one thing on this is, take something like Neko Health. You know, Daniel X, Spotify, the new kind of, I don't know, mole check, body cameras, blood test, and the way that's done. When stuff like that comes out, do you look at that with your property development or Harley Street Health District hat on, and kind of, are you interested in that kind of news and go like, oh, I wonder how they've done that. I wonder what space they're using. I wonder how they're doing it. And do you look at it from that perspective?
Yes. I mean, you do, but you think, is this going to change the delivery of healthcare? Is it a partial change, or is it a fundamental change to healthcare? That's what I'm kind of more interested in. But yes, you want to, if there's some amazing proposition comes along, then you want to see whether it can be delivered in Harley Street. Of course, you want to do that. But it's interesting to us that a lot of those businesses are drawn to this area, though. It's important for them. They feel that in order for their business to develop, it's really important for them to be in Harley Street. But we act with a lot of humility. We know that businesses can choose to be anywhere. Health tech organisations and entrepreneurs can choose to be anywhere. What we're doing, though, is working hard to get them here. It's our strategic objective to build on that. We want them here. We want to be known as that cluster, that area where it happens. That's really, we want it to be the home of health tech. It's the home of health. We want it to be the home of health tech. And I think that a lot of people sort of not quite ignored health tech, but it's been under the radar.
It has.
It's looked a bit more sexy to be in, providing lab spaces and whether that be Canary Wharf or White City. But the other thing that's really important for me is its place here. We are in a unique place, and I don't mean just Harley Street, I'm speaking more broadly. If you look at the area between Paddington and King's Cross, and you've got the Marylebone Road, and you only got 100 yards or 200 yards either side of it, and if you look at the institutions that exist there, the healthcare, the two, I talked about, Imperial, and I talked about UCLH, but actually the public health system, but there's nowhere in the world that I can think of in the centre of a city with the healthcare and innovation IP that exists there. And if you look at then the geography where Harley Street sits within that, it's almost in the middle.
Yeah.
We're south of the Marylebone Road, but it's an incredible location, very strong, very rich in data science, and with a big digital health footprint. So if it's going to happen in London, that is the area it's going to happen in. And we inevitably we will share that success. If we are successful, I'm sure that there's a sort of a ripple effect of benefits that goes more widely out. Great, we can all benefit. It may well be. I mean, someone said to me before, what would happen if you had a business here that that became the next. I think there's a saying that they believe it's consumer health tech organisations might be the largest company in the world in 10, 20 years' time, just because of the way things are heading. Well, if they started off here, that would be absolutely wonderful. They wouldn't then be here. They might have moved on to another part of London. But I always believe that success follows success. So as soon as that business is vacated, if you tell them that they've become the next best thing, then you're not going to get a shortage of people knocking on your door to want to come in. It's the easiest. If someone leaves your organisation for an amazing job, it's always easy to recruit in their wake, because people ask what the last person did, which is really important.
Absolutely, which means it's just focus on creating value, on creating value, and all of that stuff is downstream. Yeah. And just on that, I think clearly. It's so funny because coming here and speaking to you of like, okay, yeah, I'm just a property developer, etc. I mean, you've used the word ambulatory. You've used a lot of healthcare terminology. You've used a lot of health tech terminology. Yeah. Like this is something that you clearly think about this. You're definitely passionate about this. That's it's an easy thing to say. It's a difficult thing to show, but you are passionate about this. Like What's driving your passion to do this? Is it the size of the opportunity? Is it anything personal? Like what's driving your passion around this?
It's good. If we go back to, I always use the phrase faking it. We always feel that we mix with medics and we pick up all the terminology and we sort of like nod away and use it. Seed it into conversations here, there, and everywhere. But it's inevitable that you spend a lot of time, so you do pick up knowledge and understanding. I think I'm passionate. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is that a lot of these entrepreneurs and health tech will say, "Oh, you've got to go to America to make your fortune." There's always an American angle.
I get told this all the time.
Exactly. Well, let's beat that. Let's make it happen here. Let's look at so in my mind, I think there are these obstacles in order to deliver success from a brilliant idea to commercial reality. And what I'm trying to do in my own way is clear those obstacles out of the way, or help people to navigate those obstacles. How do they clear them? And it may well be that I can't deliver all of it, because at the end of the day, we are only a real estate business. But I'll make sure that I can work on as many as I can, and that will mean whether we do that ourselves, whether we do that in collaboration with others. I mean, this space is in collaboration with others, and but we will work for it. And it may well be that we give the agency to someone else. We give them the accreditation to do something in the Harley Street Health District that we can't do. So that's my dream, and I'm quite passionate about solving. I really care about the health system in our country and it not working or failing. And if I, and my sort of small way, can be a really tiny infinitesimal part of that solution, then I will do everything I can to do that. And what I want to impart with my colleagues, it was a wonderful, we do our sort of town hall meetings, and I brought all the company up here and we presented in the auditorium and we talked about this building. Actually, I didn't do any of it. It was the team who delivered the building. And we're lucky that John Craig came from UCL, and he was talking about UCL partners and talking about who they're working with and the difference they make. And you know what, at the end of it, I thanked John and I said, guys, you don't just work for a property company, you actually work for a business that is making a difference to healthcare in this country. We're delivering the space, but I really wanted them to believe that, because that's what makes it different. That's what makes it different for us.
That's amazing. You're also very, I feel fired up. Like, you're very good at kind of, you're very good orator, you're very good at, I guess that's leadership, right? Or at least that's part of leadership. You obviously need to inspire a team of people to deliver this vision underneath you. And I noticed the last time we met, you're very visionary about what you want to achieve, and especially what you've just talked about now. What makes a good leader to you, or what is the good leader that you're trying to be? How do you lead? What do you think good leadership is?
So I think, good leadership is really empowering people to deliver a fantastic outcome, and that's really what I'm trying to do. We've got a great team of people. This idea and health tech isn't down to one person. It's not down to anyone's singular vision. It's down to a team. And some people in the team don't quite get it right away, so you have to sort of take them through the process. So I think good leadership is about empowering. It's also, I think it's important that leaders are passionate. And I think it's important that you bring some of that to play, because actually if they believe that you see it and you want to do it, then they have a choice. They either get behind you or they choose to leave. Sadly, in some cases, and that's not the case of this. But I can't. If you work in a property business, I can't see how you couldn't be more excited about what we're trying to achieve here. Look, somebody might leave because they get offered ridiculous money to go somewhere else, but what I really want them to do is get behind what we're trying to do here. So I think that's the leadership. It's about empowering, it's about creating the vision and being passionate about its delivery.
Yeah, I think there's just a huge opportunity here. You know it. You're very good and very clear at articulating that. My final question before I let you go would be, do you think about legacy here for yourself, although you want the district to live on, I guess, rather than have a legacy, but do you think about legacy, and what would you want that to be?
I don't think of like self legacy. Look, I'm understanding. I'm closer to the end of my career than I am at the beginning of my career, clearly. This has got so much potential. It's sort of an infinite potential almost in essence. So I'm not going to be around to see all of it. But what I would love to do is to create a clamour for my job when I go. So in the sense that people look at what's there, what's been achieved, and they say, hey, I want to be part of that. This is a fantastic opportunity. So I think the best legacy I can leave is to have the strongest candidate list for my job when the vacancy emerges.
I love that. There's a quote, isn't there, about a functioning society or a good civilization when when men plant trees that they will never see bear fruit. Which I think sums us up quite nicely.
Absolutely, thank you.
So Mark, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Thanks for inviting me on your podcast. Thank you.